Criminalist Behavior Podcast, the podcast that takes you deep into the heart of Louisiana's history and current, most chilling true crime stories. I'll be guiding you through the darkness of these crimes and all of those involved. Each week, we dig deep on those forgotten crimes or those crimes currently happening with the underlying legends that continue to haunt us. So lean in, listen, and get ready, because true crime is anything but ordinary. Stay with me as we unravel what happened in these mysteries. Today, we will be talking about case Mason Jar Beating. It's episode number 38. And if this is your first time listening, hi, my name is Sarah Soudier, and I'm your host for Criminalist Behavior Podcast. I want to thank you for listening to the show, and I really hope you enjoy it. So, trigger warning, this episode may contain content of a graphic nature, including those descriptions of physical and sexual violence against adults, children, and animals. Listener discretion is advised. So, before I jump into the story, I know I promised y'all 2 episodes last week, but I ended up having to have surgery where they inserted a camera to the bottom of my esophagus into my stomach just to monitor, and I had to wear this monitor. And needless to say, the surgery didn't go as planned. So it was very painful for me to speak more and swallow, more or less eat. So as you can tell, I'm still having issues. So if my voice sounds a little distorted, it's because I'm still dealing with the repercussions of having this surgery. Doctors think that the camera came dislodged and ended up being in my back. But y'all bear with me. I do apologize for not coming true to y'all. But I just want to explain myself. I know I don't have to explain myself. But I promised y'all 2 episodes last week, and I didn't make it. So I am going to make up for it. Y'all are getting 2, if not 3 episodes this week. And I'm going to be doing them back to back. So I want to make sure that y'all get y'all content. And I really want to thank my devoted fans for sticking out with me, because I just have some issues medically and personally. But long story short, I'm okay. And we're just going to get through this, okay? So thank y'all so much. So today, like I said, it's a case about a mason jar beating, and also a murder that happened in the process, separate from the person who was beaten by the mason jar. So the victim in this case, Johnathan Bothwell, he was born on December 16, 2000 in Shreveport, Louisiana. And for those of y'all who don't know Louisiana all that much, Shreveport is in the northwestern part of Louisiana. So that's where this case took place. Johnathan was born to his mother, Maria Purtis, and his father, David Bothwell. Their marriage did not last, and both of them ended up seeking other companions throughout the story. His sisters were Demary Cynthia and Liz Mary Rello. And Johnathan participated in Boy Scouts as a kid, and he actually obtained the rank of an Eagle Scout, which is literally the highest on the totem pole when it comes down to Boy Scouts. And Johnathan attended Simple Church and Bossier Parish Community College, and he worked at the family business. And that family business was Baskin Robbins. And Johnathan, at the point of this incident, was living with his mom at the 100 block of Dogwood South Lane in Shreveport. His mother and his father owned Baskin Robbins, and they own their own entities, just so it doesn't get confused right there, okay? So Dogwood South, that neighborhood, is a gated community located just beyond Bossier City limits between Stockwell Road and Bellevue Road. It's generally sized with these extravagant homes that were built in the early 2000s, and it has a scene that has rolling hills and tall pine trees. And these particular homes provide a large space for families to be very comfortable. It had like a large square footage of the home, with open floor plans and large lawns, as well as it kept up to date with the modern living. And homeowners were a part of the Dogwood Park Homeowners Association, as it was adjacent to another neighborhood that shared many of the same benefits and amenities as this particular neighborhood. And among this peaceful yet woodsy neighborhood, many found favorable perks for maximizing their recreational needs, with the neighborhood playground, a swimming pool, and also they actually had a clubhouse within this neighborhood that was available for private events and parties. And there were tennis courts and a 1-mile trail that was connected to Red Chute Bayou that people could hike. And it was actually part of the Bossier City School District, and the local schools in this particular area was Stockwell Elementary, as well as Cope Middle School and Airline High School. So Johnathan attended these 3 schools: the Stockwell Elementary, Cope Middle School, and Airline High School. And it's pretty much country living with a very good comfort and just a very spacious, woodsy area, if you want to picture that scenery. Johnathan was described as an amazing friend who was always available to lend a listener's ear when someone needed to talk or vent. And pretty much anyone who was associated with him could always go to him with problems, and he would suggest some type of advice. He was said to have a sweet, thoughtful, giving, positive, and kind, funny personality. And he had nicknames that were Big John and John Deere. He attended, like I said, Cope Middle and Airline High School while growing up. The incident is what I'm about to get into, y'all. So, in a rare commodity of distinct circles that we develop ourselves as we're growing up with these different crowds we hang out with, it was literally misplaced and leading to a violent confrontation on Jonathan's friend choice. The aftermath was marked by chaos, revealing the ruthless nature of what we know as the drug trade, where alliances shift like the tide, and one's former friend or acquaintance, as we may find out, really became into one's adversary. So November 29, 2019, a young man by the name of Curly stopped his vehicle before entering the subdivision, and he removed his license plate, hoping to avoid detection as it had surveillance within the neighborhood. Curly arrived at the residence of Johnathan Bothwell, who was 18 years old at the time of this incident, at the 100 block of Dogwood South Lane, around 3:15 in the morning. And this happened on a Friday. And in the scheme of things, detectives believe that this particular meeting at 3 a.m., 3:15 a.m. per se, was a drug rip, where the supposed drug deal was actually intended to be a robbery. And during the robbery, Johnathan Bothwell was shot and killed in the residence. And the narrative revolves around a drug rip that occurred in the underlying narcotics trade, where Bothwell found himself ensnared in a web of betrayal and deception on once a known friend and acquaintance named Curly. The details, though somewhat muddled, indicate that Johnathan Bothwell, possibly in a league with a network of dealers, sought to procure a significant shipment of illicit substances. However, in an iconic twist of fate, he was betrayed by those he considered allies. There were other family members in the residence at the time this incident took place, and Curly battered one of the other family members in the house before he fled the scene. And Curly, by the way, his full name is Taylor Jackson Curly. He was also 18 years old at the time of this incident. Johnathan Bothwell's mother, Martha Purtis, was the family member that was beaten in the face with a mason jar by Taylor Curley. And this happened because when his mom, Purtis, heard the shot, she immediately came running out the bathroom to see what the hell was going on, to be confronted with Taylor Curley, who then beat her before he fled the scene. She was at the wrong place at the wrong time. Had she not come out of that bathroom, she probably wouldn't have sustained these injuries, because it just seemed that he was there, meet up with Johnathan for drugs and or rob him. But then she came out because she heard the gunshots, and she literally just got the gist of the beating from Taylor with the mason jar. And I don't know if y'all are aware, a mason jar is made of glass, right? And to imagine being freaking brutally beaten with a mason jar, I mean, just imagine, like, beaten in the face and everything with a mason jar. I mean, cuts, bruises, you name it. So Bossier City Sheriff's Office detectives and crime scene investigators started investigating the shooting death since 3:20 a.m. that Friday morning. Now, mind you, 3:15 is whenever he showed up. 3:20 is whenever detectives started being at the crime scene. Not long, okay? They conducted a thorough investigation all day and overnight. And they culminated the findings with the arrest of Taylor Jackson Curley early that Saturday morning. Law enforcement officers from the Cato Parish Sheriff's Office and DeSoto Parish Sheriff's Office and Greenwood Police Department assisted in this investigation. Bossier City investigators have recovered the firearm on the scene. So as Taylor Jackson Curley shot Johnathan Bothwell and beat his mother ruthlessly with his mason jar, he fled the scene, leaving the weapon behind. Taylor Jackson Curley, 18, of the 100 block of Bodco Loop, was arrested on warrant charges that early Saturday morning of one count of first-degree murder and one count of aggravated second-degree battery. And that was on November 30th, 2019. He was taken into custody in the Greenwood area without incident by the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force. Taylor Jackson Curley faced a total of $875,000 bond, and that was $750,000 bond for the murder charge and $125,000 bond for the battery charge. So, in Louisiana, first-degree murder is the killing of a human being. And it is determined to be a specific degree because they got first, second, third, manslaughter, all that good stuff. So when the offender has specific intent to kill or inflict great bodily harm and is engaged in perpetration or attempted perpetration of aggravated kidnapping, second-degree kidnapping, aggravated escape, aggravated arson, aggravated first-degree rape, forcible or second-degree rape, burglary, armed robbery, so forth and so forth. If a murder happens in those instances, it would be classified as first-degree murder. It's also when a perpetrator has specific intent to kill or inflict great bodily harm upon using a firearm or going against a peace officer, a fireman, civilian employee of the Louisiana State Police Crime Laboratory, or any other forensic laboratory engaged. Also, there's several different circumstances, but this was obviously planned murder, and that is also the limitations of classifying it as a first-degree murder. You planned this murder, you follow through with the plan, and there's evidence to back that up to show that it was planned. It didn't just happen when you showed up and it just happened. So aggravated second-degree battery is whenever a battery is committed with a dangerous weapon, when the offender intentionally inflicts serious bodily injury. And in this case, as you could tell, it was a mason jar that was that dangerous weapon. And that says whoever commits the crime of aggravated second-degree battery shall be fined not more than $10,000 or imprisoned with or without hard labor for not more than 15 years or both. At least 1 year of the sentence imposed shall be served without the benefit of parole, probation, or suspension of the sentence if the offender knew or should have known that the victim is an active member in the United States Army, or is a disabled veteran, or aggravated second-degree battery was committed because of a particular status. And going back to the first-degree murder charge, that could be inflicted depending on a grand jury. You could just have life in prison, which would be 25 years with or without the possibility of parole. And depending on that, also, it could be a death sentence. So, cell phone forensics on the cell phone data that was tracking Taylor Curley to the subdivision and placed him in Johnathan Bothwell's home just before a 911 call was made to report the shooting. The suspect in the shooting death of the 18-year-old Johnathan Bothwell made his first court appearance December 2nd, 2019. Taylor Jackson Curley appeared in Bossier District Court via video from the Bossier Maximum Security Prison for a 72-hour hearing. And he told the court that he could not afford an attorney, so his case was referred to the public defender's office in Bossier Parish. He was advised of his rights to counsel, and like I said, he was referred to the Bossier Parish public defender's office. And he faced the charges of first-degree murder in the death of Johnathan Bothwell and aggravated battery against Jonathan's mother, Maria. And now the court case starts to happen after Johnathan gets his public defender. He was found guilty in the 2019 shooting, and evidence and testimony at trial showed that in the early morning hours of November 29, 2019, the Bossier Parish Sheriff's Office responded to a shooting in the Dogwood South subdivision. And that's where deputies found Johnathan Bothwell shot to death in his home during what would later be learned as an attempted armed robbery. Bothwell's mother, Maria Pertez, was also beaten in the face with a mason jar by Taylor Curley as he tried to flee the house after shooting Johnathan Bothwell. Maria Pertez heard the shots and came out of the bathroom of the house, only to be confronted and beaten by Taylor Curley. Maria testified that she picked Taylor out of a lineup as the person who beat her in the face with a mason jar seconds after she heard the gunshots that killed her son. She sustained serious injuries in the beating, including having several of her teeth knocked out. During the trial, jurors heard testimony that Taylor Curley, who was 18 at the time, developed a plan with a juvenile male to rob the victim. Visual evidence was presented at the trial that indicated that Taylor Curley stopped his vehicle before he entered the subdivision and removed his license plate, hoping to avoid being detected. An expert in cell phone forensics for the Bossier Parish Sheriff's Office testified that cell phone data tracked Taylor Curley to Dogwood South subdivision, placing him in Johnathan Bothwell's home just before the 911 call was made to report the shooting. The jury was also shown Snapchat communications between Taylor Curley and the victim that helped investigators identify Taylor Curley as the shooter. During the trial, jurors heard testimony from multiple sheriff office personnel, including detectives and crime scene investigators. Firearm and DNA experts from the North Louisiana Crime Lab also testified as to their findings on the evidence delivered to them by investigators. Taylor Curley, who was 18 at the time, had hatched a plan with a juvenile through Snapchat communication to rob Johnathan Bothwell. Lastly, the mother of the victim took the stand to testify. Maria Pertez stood up in the courtroom and pointed directly at Taylor Jackson Curley, identifying him as the man she saw trying to flee her home after shooting her son and beating her relentlessly with a mason jar. She stood up in the courtroom and pointed, and he was also the man that she picked up out of a lineup as the person who beat her. She has sustained serious injuries, like I said previously, and a majority of her teeth got knocked out in the process. So Taylor Jackson Curley was facing mandatory life in prison for second-degree murder, and he was to be sentenced on May 6, 2024. Y'all, I came across this pen pal thing from Taylor, and I'm going to read this to y'all because this is a bit redonkulous, if you ask me, okay? So, the pen pal information, it says, Taylor Jackson Curley, number 75897, Bossier Parish Maximum Security, 2985 Old Plain Dealing Road in Old Plain Dealing, Louisiana, 71067 in USA. And this is what his pen pal profile states, y'all. Wrong place, wrong friends, everything just seems so wrong. I'm innocent, but even if I was free to write now, I feel as though I would still be in somewhat of a prison, an emotional prison, a lonely prison called my life. I think I am gay and had to act tough growing up homeless and going from one foster home to the next. I doubt anyone will even read this. I have so much love to give, if only I could trust that one person, including myself. I am 18 years old and a former nursing student. I like to help people, and I should beat these charges. I was just there and should be out in a year or so. Y'all, how clueless is this MF? What? So, I just wanted to throw that in because I came across that and I was like, the fuck? No, he didn't. Wrong place, wrong time. You literally had this plan. No, boo. It didn't just happen. It wasn't a friend that did it. It was you. So now we're going to get to the verdict of this court case, y'all. The jury came to deliberation after only 3.5 hours. And they returned a unanimous guilty verdict of second-degree murder against a Bossier Parish man who killed a man during this robbery attempt, a.k.a. Johnathan Bothwell. Y'all heard correct. Second-degree murder, not first-degree that he was originally charged for. The case was prosecuted by Bossier Parish District Attorney's Office, and the prosecutors were Chance Nairn and Cody Boyd, who worked extremely hard presenting this case and making sure that the victim and his family got justice. Taylor completed a numerous number of appeals. On July 28, 2022, the complaint was against a Bossier Maximum Security Center. And in this appeal, it was a deficient motion to leave to proceed in forma pauperis and administrative entry to capture motion relief applicant that wasn't on an approved form. On August 5th, 2022, this filing was for a proposed memorandum order, and this motion was denied as Taylor failed to submit documents on the approved forms, filing fee, or completed IFP application deadline for a deficiency set for September 7, 2022. On August 25th, 2022, he requested for a motion of extension of time from that filing fee of September 7th. And the motion was actually granted. So they set the deadline to comply with September 29, 2022. And on September 1st, 2022, Taylor filed for a motion of habeas corpus form. And September 8th, he did another extension of time to correct the deficiency that was placed on the August 25th motion, because originally they went back on the same day. So it was originally scheduled for August 29, 2024, but they had a typo, and instead of doing that, they put it to October 10th, 2022. And he filed a motion to stay on September 8th, which that motion was denied on September 13th, 2022, as court granted the extension to correct the deficiency on 10/10. I know this is a little bit confusing, but there's a reason why I'm reading through this, okay? October 11, 2022, he filed a joint voluntary motion to dismiss, and that was actually granted to him on October 17, 2022. So, on an application that was filed on May 10, 2023, Taylor Jackson Curley filed for de mandamus on the docket of 26th Judicial District, Parish of Bossier, Judge Robert Lane Pitter. And, sorry, my throat is just not good. The order was because he complained that the trial court had not complied with his court's June 7, 2023 order amendments directing the trial court to enter a disposition ruling for the motion for a speedy trial. So, a writ of mandamus is a court order that requires a government official to perform their duties or refrain from a legal action. The term comes from the Latin phrase mandamus, which means we command. And a dispositive ruling is a final ruling of legal issue, claim, or controversy. And in a criminal case, the disposition event is the actual verdict. So the right to a speedy trial. Now, this is something with the habeas corpus, right? So his motion to file that habeas corpus is he had the right to a speedy trial, which is, given rights in any defendant's case, according to the law. And the right to a speedy trial, the state and the defendant have the right to a speedy trial. By the time period for the filing a bill of information or indictment after arrest shall be as follows. Option 1. When the defendant is continued in custody subsequent to an arrest, an indictment or information shall be filed within 30 days of the arrest if the defendant is being held for a misdemeanor, and within 60 days if it was for a felony. And then part of that, it also says, when the defendant is continued in custody subsequent to an arrest, an indictment shall be filed within 120 days of the arrest if the defendant is being held for a felony for which the punishment may be death or life imprisonment. So we do know that, he had 2 felony counts against him, so this would be in that instance. Although the trial court set this matter for contradictory hearing on July 24, 2023, and the case minutes show that the trial court has still failed to dispose Jackson Curley's July 8, 2021 motion. And in Louisiana, a contradictory hearing, if you don't know, is a legal proceeding where the opposing parties present their arguments and evidence in response to a timely objection or motion. It is required for any objection that is filed in a timely manner, and this also includes motions to set aside a guilty verdict and for a new trial and motions to amend a particular sentence. And according to Taylor's motion to enforce, it is hereby granted and the case is recommended to trial court with instructions to enter a disposition ruling on behalf of Taylor Curley's motion for a speedy trial within 30 days of them filing that habeas corpus order. So, what do y'all think in this, y'all? To further dissect the events, Johnathan Bothwell, at the tender age of 18, was unfortunately discovered lifeless with the confinements of his own residence and the victim of a ruthless armed robbery gone wrong. Now, we must think to ourselves, what would drive a man to commit such heinous act upon this young man who still has a full life? What are you doing at 18 years old selling drugs? Like, the narcotics trade, while profitable, is rife with peril and it attracts violent individuals. It really does. The fact that another individual was present during the incident adds to the layers of this complexity of this case. And we also must ask, did Johnathan have an accomplice? Because it was literally said through Snapchat communications that he had a juvenile that he hatched this plan with, but that juvenile picked Curley as the suspect. So he did not take part into the crime. So should he be involved in this too? Because he was part of the plan and he never went and spoke about it, so he should actually get accessory with it, right? Because he was no knowledge of it. He knew it was happening when it was happening. I believe he should be charged as well. Why this wasn't brought up to trial? Because I could not find any information that this juvenile was even charged, any hint of a charge in this matter. And Taylor reacted swiftly upon noticing Jonathan's mom as she exited the bathroom? And was it feared that he did? That she could be the one to identify him? Did he think that he killed Maria, Jonathan's mom, at the time he beat her relentlessly with that mason jar? These are all questions that are coming to my mind. And I'm sure as listeners, y'all are having these same questions. Also, an important consideration, what was Taylor's mindset like? I mean, he was struggling whether or not he was gay or not. Is that reasonable cause to rob someone? Hell no. What does that have to do with anything? Regardless of this transaction, because it involved drugs and it should not be taking place with two 18-year-olds, okay? What actions, as you growing up, or your mindset, determined that robbing Jonathan was going to get you ahead in life? And then you had to shoot him. You couldn't just rob him, you had to shoot him. Why did you have to shoot him if it was just a robbery? It's not making sense to me. And he mentioned in his pen pal that he grew up within the foster care system. Now, I know foster care system is not peaches and cream. It really isn't. Some people go through hell and back through the foster system because some of these families that are fostering kids are just pure fucking evil. But that still doesn't give Taylor an excuse to be able to rob this one young man of his life, more or less of his money and or drugs. I mean, what do you think in this? For Taylor to engage with Jonathan only for him to result this whole incident with just violence. I mean, what was part of Taylor's larger scheme of things? What was he thinking? We also must scrutinize the environment and the underlying of narcotics that often has unsavory friends and acquaintances that can turn into just treachery events. This case suggests a deeper part of betrayal, and perhaps Jonathan was perceived as a threat or had double-crossed Taylor in some way, shape, or form. And this is why Taylor determined violence and killing Jonathan was the only answer. Also, let's consider Jonathan's mom, Maria. Did she know that her son was dealing drugs? Was she a part of this plan? Did she allow this to happen? Then we got to go into an incident like, let's not blame the victim, but at the same time, why are you allowing your son to sell drugs from your home? If, in fact, she didn't know. See, that's a whole nother persona right there. We could get into that sleuth of issues, but, I mean, these are just all questions that come into my mind. Did she witness what was happening? And that could provide vital clues to, like, maybe she could have prevented this from happening, right? If Johnathan Bothwell was not selling these illicit drugs, this would have never took place, because then Taylor wouldn't have been able to hatch this plan to rob him of his drugs and or money, whatever the case it was. So I am very interested to hear what you have to say. Do you feel that Taylor's pen pal thing is right? Do you feel that just because he grew up in foster care and or he was struggling with the fact that he may or may not be gay can justify the fact that he beat Maria and Jonathan? I mean, he killed Jonathan. What? I'm interested. I'm so interested to hear what y'all have to say. Please write, comment, or review. Email us at criminalbehaviorpodcast@gmail.com. You can message me on social media, all the forms of social media there is. And if you enjoyed our show, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Acast, Amazon Music, wherever you listen to your podcast. And be sure to come back on, let's say today's Monday. Come back on Wednesday. That's when I'm going to release the next episode. And that story is of Kathleen Mouton. And if y'all don't know who Kathleen Mouton is, y'all in for a big surprise, because, oh my God, that is a story to tell. Until then, this is your host, Sarah Soudier. Don't forget to like, share, follow, or subscribe to Criminalist Behavior, a Louisiana true crime podcast. Thank y'all for listening, and I promise y'all that other episode is coming out. And thank y'all for being so supportive of the pod. Oh, and I'm not sure if I told y'all, because, memory and then hospital stays. But long story short, our podcast was nominated, in case you haven't been listening and this is your first episode that you chimed in on. Our podcast was nominated for the Women's Podcasting Award in documentary section. And no, we did not win, but it was just a great experience to know that we were actually nominated. The show is going places. It's nowhere where I want it to be by any means. I plan on having scheduled episodes so we don't have to run into any issues in which that, life happens and I can't produce an episode. I want to have some recorded ahead of time, because that's a professional thing to do, and I'm trying to get there. But I am new to this whole podcasting thing. I started at the end of January, beginning of February of this year, and we are in November. So yeah, it's rarely new, and it's going places. We had a few hiccups along the way. Like, I live in South Louisiana. I do cases in Louisiana. Mostly Louisiana. I am going to start doing cases outside of Louisiana, and that'll be for our subscribers. So you can follow us on our website. We are and I will link that in the show notes, because it is a long name, because Louisiana podcast. But I am going to link that in the show notes, so please join in on that. You can follow the Patreon. You can just look up Criminalist Behavior, Louisiana True Crime Podcast on the Patreon webpage, and it'll bring you to our website. But thank y'all so much, and I really appreciate and enjoy y'all listening. And I love to hear from y'all, whether y'all want to be a co-host with me, y'all want to just come upon the show and just vibe with me in these incidences. You want to be a guest, or if you have any different cases you would like for me to cover or talk about a previous case I did cover. Another thing I wanted to mention to you all. There is some updates on some cases that I previously did. Little Isaiah, also the most recent case I believe was Paula Boudreaux. So I will be doing those. I'm just waiting on the ending verdict of those cases prior to. So y'all just keep on listening, and thank y'all so much for being devoted fans and listeners. And until next time, this is your host, Sarah Soudier, and I'm signing out. Bye.